I'm Kim Pearson. I teach in the English department in the interactive multimedia program, and my role in the video game curriculum project was to contribute some information on interactive storytelling to the grant, to do some workshops and with the students on storytelling, on technical writing, and on the social and ethical implications of games. And I also tried to help with the development of the website.
I'm Phil Sanders. I teach 3D animation, interactive multimedia, digital media types of things. I'm currently the coordinator of the interactive multimedia major in the media program. And I guess my particular interests are in collaboration, interactivity, and intelligent media.
I'm Chris Ault. I teach in the Interactive Multimedia program. I just started in the fall, so I was a little late coming on board in terms of the whole games curriculum. The discussion had been advanced a lot before I even got here. But during the fall, I got on board by coming in and doing a guest lecture in Ursula's class about game controllers and things like that. In the second semester, I actually co-taught along with Ursula and Teresa when we were actually trying to get the game produced. And in that respect, I supervised the visual art team and also the story team.
And I'm Teresa Nakra, and I teach in the music department here. I teach music theory and technology, and my role has been to advise and shepherd and coddle and motivate the audio team. So to work directly with the composer and the audio sound designers to design a compelling and supportive role for audio and music in the game.
Whoa. Flashback. Yes. With a big, like, youth filter. All right. So way back then, it was almost 19 years ago exactly that I rolled out of bed on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Must have been, I think, around 4 a.m. because I had to make my way all the way downtown to the Staten Island Ferry and over to Staten Island, where Professor Phil Sanders was waiting to pick me up and drive me to my first ever day at the College of New Jersey. I was interviewing for this job. Soon after that morning, I met Ursula Woles and Kim Pearson, who, along with Phil, founded the Interactive Multimedia program. And it was at the intersection of their interests in their expertise in art, in writing and storytelling, in computer science and journalism. As most people in this room know, there is never an easy, clear answer to what is interactive multimedia. But what was immediately clear to me that day, 19 years ago, was the vision and the enthusiasm that these two people here to my left had for this brave new experiment and for giving students a platform to be creative and innovative and collaborative. In less than a week, the seniors whose projects you enjoyed tonight, and by the way, the seniors whose projects you enjoyed tonight will walk across the stage as the 20th graduating class in the Interactive Multimedia major. And tonight we are so lucky to have Kim and Phil with us, our founders, to consider the past, the present, and the future of IMM. So let me get the conversation started. Since you perceived of a need and recognized the value of an undergraduate curriculum in this weird thing called interactive multimedia, a lot has changed. The technology that we work with in our classrooms day to day in IMM has changed. career opportunities and professional paths have changed. Entire industries have popped up. Others have reinvented themselves. Others have faded away. So my question is, with all that change, what needs and concerns were you addressing back then when you founded IMM that still persist today?
Well, I was not thinking about technology primarily. Technology was a tool. What I was thinking about, I had come out of industry and I was in media, and I was thinking about the future workforce and the skill set that students would need. And I was also thinking about how students learn and where innovation comes from. I've been working at Bell Labs. I worked at a comprehensive cancer center. I was in magazine journalism. And so I worked with people who were doing things like finding the evidence of the Big Bang and, curing diseases. And I was thinking about where will that innovation come from in the future? I knew that students had to learn how to work in self-managed teams. I knew that I believed in constructivism. Before there was IMM, when I left industry and came to this college, I was looking for people outside of my department to play with. One of Liz Mackey here is, if IMM had a foremother, it's Liz Mackey. Okay. So we were, along with Terry Burns, who some of you may remember, we were creating these collaborative projects out of Hyde. Nobody was giving us any support. And creating print magazines, creating online magazines, and then Phil came along and played with us. And so quickly it became clear to us we needed an infrastructure. And I wasn't thinking in terms of specific technologies. I was thinking, how do you create the sandbox so that students would come and understand how the world was changing and would be prepared to be participants and not pawns.
Okay, so yeah, and many of the things that Kim just said are exactly where I was. Except perhaps I was more involved with technology than Kim was. I came here from NYU's Interactive Telecommunications program, and we were working with Apple and IBM and Microsoft and all these companies and professions that were working on changing, radically changing the world. So one of the constants of this field, and again, it was to try and place us in the middle of this incredible boil of chaos. And so one of the constants of this field is continuous change and adaptation. So a lot has changed, a lot of the details and forms, technical forms have changed, but there's a lot of stuff that stays the same. There's fundamental skills and knowledge, how to create a character, how to tell a story, how to engage a user, which is really critical. That's one of the things that I've been involved with since late 70s. Essentially, they're the same. And whether the pen or tablet is a digital one or an analog one, doesn't matter. So many of the processes are similar. You can learn one system or app that gives you the possibility of moving to the next one, and you can kind of build on that. So that's one of the key things that I wanted us to focus on. And then the other one, for me personally, like I said, was UI UX, user interface, user experience, back before they existed. It's like, and I had this like really wacko computer program that I had in a couple galleries in 78, 79. And it's like, people were scared of computers at that point. It's like they were the ones that like screwed up your bills or, surveyed you and stuff. Well, they're still doing that. That's no different, but some things never change, but they wouldn't go near a computer. So one of the things was to introduce people to how you can get communication with this sort of intermediary there, or how you can use the intermediary to create things. We wanted to create this place that would be on the intersection of technology and art, technology and writing, technology and storytelling, technology and wordsmithing, technology and computing, technology and making, all that stuff, right? So Ursula, Kim, and I were working at the college in departments that didn't completely understand what we were doing. And so and particularly, we were having students who were staying here for 5 years or more to try and graduate with something that makes sense. Time's up. Okay.
No.
So I think that was the goal. One of our goals was that was kind of like the heart for me of IMM, was trying to create a place that would like work with these students, work with the faculty, work with the different technologies and forms, and build stuff from that.
And I would add one thing, which was central to all of us. We cared a lot about ethics and we cared a lot about equity. And so when it came down to things like our grading philosophies, or it came down to the, we used to have a whole day devoted to gaming and ethics. There was a lot of discussion about how to create inclusive classrooms, and so all of those things I think are increasingly important now that we have seen how these media are being used by people who do not care about humans. So I'll leave that there.
All right. Actually, that's perfect. If I could grab onto that. From your early vision of IMM through to, I hope what we still do today, we have always tried to center people in our conversations about technology. So along with humans comes this notion of the humanities, and in an academic setting like this, we're talking about areas of academic study that focus on human culture, things like literature, philosophy, history, etc. Recent trends in higher ed seem a little skeptical of the humanities, to put it lightly. Students and sometimes their parents appear more interested in college delivering specific tangible skills that can be immediately applied to specific professions. IMM, we're kind of caught in the middle. We do both because we do deal with specific technical tools and skills. But at this juncture, as we start the next 20 years of IMM, how would you make the case for holding on to the humanities side, the human side of interactive multimedia?
Because I don't want anybody here to be party to genocide. Let's start there. Technology is not divorced from culture, and technology is not divorced from history. One of the things that we, even from the micro level, even when we were writing the proposals, we talked about, Phil would talk about math, would talk about algebra, and I would talk about computer science, and Ursula would talk about poetry. And that's how we found a common language. And that's the way the real world really works. There is, I've had the privilege of working with Nobel Prize winners and people who are really good at what they do. And people who are really, really good at what they do not create these false dichotomies about knowledge. Teams that are really effective have diverse perspectives, and teams and work that really benefits humanity, nothing about us without us. That's how we move forward in the world. So that is, if higher education loses that, then we need an alternative to higher education.
Yeah, the question, and people keep bringing up this question, and it's a really difficult question because it creates an artificial division between science and technology on one hand and humanities and arts on the other, and it's basically a non-useful way of looking at things. It funnels us into this non-productive way of thinking that lead to endless debates that are essentially unresolvable. Okay, it's not new. Back in the 60s, when I was an undergraduate, there was this huge argument about the two cultures. There was science, it was from C.P. Snow. I don't know, you probably remember all this stuff, right? Like me. But it was science and technology versus the humanities. Then the argument was, how can we bring them together? Well, our argument is that they're not separate. They're all one thing. You can't get one, I mean, okay, you can like artificially try and cut yourself in half, or, you know, try and put blinders on or something like that, but you can't truly separate them. This was through education. It was as if, you know, think about two Alice in Wonderland knights, one dressed in like humanity armor and the other one dressed in technology science armor. And they were going out at each other and they kept like knocking each other off the horse. And like, eventually people got tired of that debate and it went away. And here we're in the middle of it again. Now it really counts, because if you don't have that combination, you have a danger of either being ignorant one way or another. Right? If you don't understand technology, if you don't understand how to make things, then you're just very cerebral and you're very divorced from everything. It's very abstract. If on the other hand, you're working with just the technology or whatever, and just making things, there is serious danger of putting things out that are worse than not useful, that are dangerous to like human society, basically, or individuals. It's like, you know, we'll get into that with the AI as well, I'm sure. But one of the things I've always felt that STEM education was lacking in at least one critical element. And then when you add the A for arts in there and you get STEAM, it's like, I feel a lot more comfortable now. We should actually maybe make it STEM or something with humanities. It's like the more real, more rounded you are, and the team is, and the education is, and the students and the faculty and so forth, the better off you are. And there really isn't a separation between all of them. You inevitably need to work with vision, sound, computation, verbal communication. You know, most IMM projects start with an idea that's expressed in words and visuals. And it's also necessary to understand what's come before in the area. You need a full toolbox. You know, you can't go out there with just a hammer. Well, you could, and it's possible to do a lot of things with just a hammer, but it helps if you have a couple other tools with.
And I would add one thing, even if you think you're a pure technologist, you make an assumption about the human that will use the technology. And if you don't have a well-rounded education, you will assume that that human is an extension of you. And it will only work for people who are like you. And that is how we end up with authoritarians or failures. One extreme is the other. I don't want to live in that world.
So, yeah.
I'd love to
Yeah,
piggyback.
yeah.
So I really am here to listen to what our founders have to say, but I just want to mention something. Kim, when you started speaking, you said you were thinking about a sandbox. And I just want to say that having come to TCNJ as a new person in the same year that Chris did, and I saw the sandbox that was being created and the fun that you were having in your faculty meetings. I mean, and the deep philosophical and pedagogical issues that you were openly debating and discussing. I was deeply impressed by what you had created, and that's why I was very happy to join the team, because I saw something special was happening here.
Well, and I would, Phil, you will remember this, when we were having the search committee meetings to hire you guys, we said, we are looking for people who can do what we can't. Because we were educated in narrow disciplines and we taught ourselves outside of our disciplines, but we were looking for people, and we were looking to create a graduate who had a depth of knowledge in areas that we had not been immersed in as undergraduates. And so I cannot be more thrilled that you guys are still here. And, and that, that you, in leading the department, that you have chosen such fine people to work with you. So, I mean, to see that, to see this this,
Yeah.
this is what it was about.
Yeah, yeah.
So this, these amazing projects that you have seen tonight. So I can't tell you how often I hear some new product announcements, some big Silicon Valley keynote address or something. And I'm like, that was an IMM project. That was a thesis project 7 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm curious to hear, looking back, are there some projects that you recall from the early days of IMM that were entirely speculative at the time that have become kind of a real thing, a commonplace thing these days?
Well, I remember an early project I was introduced to that taught me a whole lot. And I remember the student who did it. It was Lamar Hines. And he did this like interactive poetry media thing that was spatially organized, and it was like based on this, like A is for Apple was his inspiration, and it was one of the things that kind of broke my fixation on linear storytelling. It's like, oh, this is what that's, yeah. It's a kind of, you could wander around in it forever. And it is not surprising that he's like a top designer at Apple now or something. I mean, so yeah, that's the first thing that sticks out of my head.
Mhm.
And of course, our first big game.
Yeah.
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 There's a lot. Oh God, there's a lot of stuff, but it's, there's 3D things that were very simple and perhaps like initial VR type of things. I mean, even back at NYU, I was teaching a course called Virtual Space and talking about virtual worlds before Jerome Lanier came out with his virtual reality, or so-called came out, and he's credited with it. And so it's like, that whole field, for example, and this is another one of your questions that may come out, but it's like, it's something that keeps evolving. So it's like, there were things that were on cutting edge at the time that were just blew everybody away. There was 3D stuff, there was game stuff. I mean, us trying to put together the game, that first game that we did, that we put out, was like remarkable. I mean, we had people from what, maybe about 8 different departments, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like this insane, again, creative chaos where people were bringing things that they knew and talking in things that they didn't know and working together. And at the end of it, came out with this actually playable, interesting project, which now somebody who is just starting out would be, okay, that's, that's okay. Yeah, that's nice.
We
So
turn,
it's like, the field keeps changing and it keeps growing and it keeps like, going up. So it's like, there's things that I remember from here. Some like, I remember 2 students that I had in one of my classes, and actually it worked into eventually compositing, which whereas other students, but one was a 3D person and one was a video person, and they wound up doing the classical ad of a camera moving around a person. And the person was in stop motion, like just frozen. But the thing was that it was like a hockey puck that had gone through the wall, and there was glass all the way through the place. And then it went into video, whoop, and then went down the hall. Actually, that would probably even hold up right now. But and there's other things that have been like that. And I am, there's way too many right now. It's just there's an embarrassment of riches, which keeps going, which is like what it should be.
I was just going to mention that video that you saw the start of was a project where we turned a first-person shooter,
Yeah.
like Half-Life
Half-Life 2.
game engine into a third-person perspective, like kid with a magical stuff.
Stuffed alien.
Yeah.
toy.
A stuffed bear, teddy bear.
Stuff,
That's it,
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that moved through this cartoon world
Yeah.
instead of like this really dark world, with a full-blown soundtrack that was with its own composer, and each character had a theme, and they did a whole level of this game. And then the next year, they did a steampunk game and did a whole level with a full-blown score played by an orchestra. I mean, that was the kind of stuff we were doing. So,
It was hard.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was messy,
Yeah.
and it was fun.
It was super fun.
And
yeah,
I still remember the characters, and some of those characters are still like really valid, and the backgrounds and the stories and things.
Yeah.
Like the characters had this teddy bear, and they could like pick up an automobile and throw it into a lake, which was great fun. And a lot of people enjoyed the heck out of that. So it's like,
Yeah.
it had like real gameplay, it had characters, it had story, and it was very valid, and it could, I could see still actually playing it.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
So there were a number of things, a wealth of things that we might have anticipated and seen sort of early signs of in the early days of IMM. I'm wondering, is there, to kind of flip that a little, is there something that you just absolutely would not have predicted way back then? Something that has sort of come to fruition that was unexpected?
I would say it's more some of the malign uses of the technologies. I mean, I think that we were very idealistic about, the potential of, say, alternate reality games. I know I was. I mean, the QAnon is basically an alternate reality game. So, and then I think the other thing that I did not anticipate was the blockchain. I was reporting on, I had a column on the Online Journalism Review where I was reporting on virtual worlds and law and stuff. And I was writing about virtual currencies 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and looking at what the regulatory structures would have to be and that kind of stuff. So, back when we were playing in Second Life a lot. And so, yeah, I had not anticipated blockchain.
yeah, I think the Second Life is a good reference because it's like the virtual worlds, the participatory worlds. And one of the things that has actually been, I mean, there's good things that have happened and bad things, but on the negative side, like when the World Wide Web first came out, and that was when I was back at NYU and cobbled things together, and we came here. And, we had students going out into the industries while they were still like, sophomores and juniors, because nobody knew how to do any of that stuff. And it was a really positive and hopeful and wonderful expanding time. And the World Wide Web was going to, I swear, the founders of ITP at NYU were like very much into things like cable and social media, and having that be a way of actually enhancing democracy and connecting communities and working with that. And the developments that have happened since then, and the way that Amazon or Google or whoever it happens to be, is collecting all this incredible information, and now we're getting into like AI type of stuff with it. And there's this very potentially scary element of Big Brother is watching you, and how it can be used for malign purposes, which is exactly why the people that are doing that need to be at least reasonably understanding of human values.
But that was not unanticipated. I mean, Bob Lucky was in the 80s was talking about the dangers of telepresence and what was going to happen if your consciousness is in some other virtual space. And I mean, he was talking about the Matrix in the mid 1980s. And I held on to that because that was part of my motivation with IMM too. So if you guys don't know who Bob Lucky is, write that name down, look it up. It's one of the guys I worked with at Bell Labs. But there's one other piece to this too. Part of the reason that we have the problem that we have is because we have this myth about the individual tech bro, the singular genius. Y'all, your parents and your grandparents paid for the internet, folks. That was public investment. They were piggybacking on public investment and public research. Okay. It was not an act of individual genius. Okay. It still isn't. Remember, most of those companies are still losing money. I mean, real talk. Okay. They just said we're in a state of regulatory capture that keeps them afloat. So don't go for the okie doke. The second part of it is there are a lot of people who built that world. There are a lot of hidden figures. It was a conversation. I was privileged to work with a number of them at Bell Labs. And that was another part of my motivation, because the people who invented the microphones that we're using, the guy who was the co-inventor of that microphone, a guy named Jim West. And if you don't know who that is, look him up. There's a whole long list of people. The foil electric microphone, the one that's in your cell phone.
But the cable sheathing.
Oh, the cable sheathing. Guy named Walter Lincoln Hawkins,
Yep.
Who's a man I had the honor of writing the first profile of him. That man was the first Black scientist at Bell Labs. And he knew George Washington Carver. Okay. So, I mean, but there's a lot of people like that. A lot of the science around women, around neural networks, that was a woman named Lynn Jelinski. So, I mean, that's not the story that's told. Okay. And so that's the other piece of it. If we told the truth about the history, and if we told the truth about how these things actually happened, it would be a lot harder to sell a lot of this mythology, the technotopia, the tech bros culture, believing that you have to let, people like Sam Altman tell you how to regulate AI. That is handing the fox the keys to the hen house. So, yeah, I will stop.
No, let's keep going with this. The tech bros and losing money in the Silicon Valley. So here's a little preview of my commencement speech for next week. There's this idea that I talk about in our innovation class, the Gartner Tech Hype Curve, that predicts that new technologies will really quickly ramp up to what's called the peak of inflated expectations. It's a good word, good phrase. And then the hype bubble bursts, and these ideas fall back down, these technologies fall back down into what's called the trough of disillusionment, also good. And then from that sort of wreckage, more gradually build back up into eventually the plateau of productivity, where the ideas really become sort of everyday useful. So with AI, will the AI bubble burst? Will that fall down into the trough of disillusionment, or
No,
is it something? This is a question we've explored in the innovation class. Is it something different? Is AI different than all these things that have burst over the 20 years of IMM?
first problem is I think we're having the wrong conversation about AI. That so much of the conversation is about the approach of AGI, it's about generative AI, and it's not about, first of all, the ubiquity of AI in our lives already, and the ways in which AI is already restructuring our social relations, our political relations, and and the responsibility for that. That's the first problem. AI is already determining who gets health insurance and, helping to make decisions about whether or not a child gets put in foster care and who gets parole. AI is already being involved. It's not determining, but it's being used in ways that are too often unexamined. And we're focused on, well, AI suddenly will power autonomous robots one day and all of those kinds of things. AI is killing children now. AI is saving lives now. We're not talking about that. That's the first problem. So when you talk about will the AI bubble burst, then you have to ask, where's the AI investment going? And is it going toward purposes that really require AI? You don't need AI for everything. So, or is it just being sold because that's the sexy thing right now? And often that's the case. But in order to be able to have that conversation, you need people involved in public policy who understand those distinctions. And the problem that we have right now is too often the people who make the public policy decisions are relying on people who have an investment on selling their particular version of that technology. So, and I used to do that kind of PR, so I understand how that works. So,
And it's true. AI is pretty ubiquitous at this point. It underlies a lot of the various things that we do. It underlies economics. It underlies commercial transactions. It underlies the political system and the news system and so forth. So it's not going away. I mean, it's even the theoretical version of AI that you're looking at. Oh, it's this very cool thing that creates things. Well, that vision has been around way back. There were automatons and mechanical sculptures, statues, all the way in Greece, China, back in the classical ancient times. It's been, again, if you try and separate something out and try and catch it at a particular point of time, it looks one way, but it's been a constant all the way through. Now, there's been very simple, crude versions of AI. Certainly, it's for some reason it's bringing back this weird thing when I was a kid, I think in junior high, and I had this little. It was essentially a piece of metal with paper, and you were doing testing with it, right? And it was teaching, and it was supposedly intelligence that was you were working with it, and it would shift you in different ways depending upon what you choose. So it's that type of a path thing, decision trees or whatever, have been around forever. And it's we do them all the time. We do. It's okay, I gotta go and get, oh geez, I need some sneakers. And it's where am I gonna go today? So I have to go to this place, and I have to get some money, I have to get the keys, blah, 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 whatever. So you build this decision tree all the time. We're constantly doing it ourselves. So it's not gonna go away because it's built into us. Okay, so one of the problems though is there's a lot of hidden AI and unregulated AI and AI that we don't even understand how exactly, or anybody understands how it works. Deep learning is a complete terra incognita. It's like, nobody understands how this thing is working. So it's actually, I think that's something that I would personally like people to study a little bit better, but preferably the people who have been studying humanities and ethics and so forth, so that they can do a little bit more intelligent regulation of this. And often, currently, if it's AI, it is often anti-human. It's replacing humans at work. It's telling people that they can't get healthcare. It's subverting our political system. But AI is also this wonderful thing. It's like, I love the idea of being able to type in things and kind of work with this like interactive. It's all human interface, human experience, UI, UX. It's like, if that is ethical, if that is well done, then things work for people. If it is not, then they work against people usually. So.
So we need to try to stick to a schedule here today. This conversation, I wish, could go on for so much longer. And if I can echo what Teresa said earlier, like, this has just felt like sitting around Holman 407, the conference table.
Wow.
Over in our old building and having these conversations over the years. It has been wonderful. Please join me in thanking our founders.
I'll sit down with you. So standing up is a introduction to me.
And I want to say it's great, so great to see Phil here tonight. Thank you for making the trip. We miss you. And I can't tell you how many times I so often want to point students to your office, Phil, for your insights. Professor Kuykhoff is with us here tonight as well. It might be fair to say that he's a little obsessed with AI. We were having a conversation a couple months ago. John has kind of trained the custom GPTs, these custom AIs. I guess I should be speaking into the microphone. On particular sort of clusters of knowledge. And then like, if you have an expert, you can go and sort of suck all their expertise into this model, then you can have a back and forth conversation with a sort of virtual version of that expert. And so John's describing this to me, and I swear the very first thing that immediately came into my mind was, we have to do that with Kim Pearson. We need to train a custom AI on Kim. Everyone who has worked here knows that Kim is the personification of TCNJ's institutional memory.
That means I'm old.
So we could train a custom AI on Kim, and we would be likely to get some really useful output. But there is no replacing in that system the input, the careful way that she listens. There is no replicating the processing, the connections that she makes between old things and new things, between different disciplines and contexts and entire ways of thinking about our work and about our world. I am grateful for this conversation tonight. I am grateful for every conversation I've had with Kim over the last 19 years. Not that I remember all the details, but I am convinced that she remembers every word of every one of them. Thank you for your mentorship and your friendship, Kim. Thank you and Phil for the interactive multimedia program, and our heartfelt best wishes on everything that comes next.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh. You guys. I'm not supposed to say anything, am I? We're out of time, right? Thank you so much.
Well, and let's acknowledge that you've announced that you're retiring. It'll be effective next year, but nonetheless, we're starting the process of letting you know how much that you'll be missed at TCNJ. We have loved having you in our lives and in the vision, the incredible eagle vision that you have for not just technology and not just humanity, but for culture and so many disciplines. Thank you for everything you've contributed to TCNJ and to IMM. We're so very grateful.
Well, thank you. You have each contributed so much to my life, and this is one of the things I dreamed of for TCNJ, and knowing that you are sustaining it and seeing so many of my former students here, current professors here, who, I'm profoundly grateful, you know, and I'm going to be around next year. I'm still going to have my office. I expect to see folks, stay in touch. So, thank you.